swing, 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 swing. I know you feel me. Swing, swing, conspiracy, hey, swing. That's our shit. I'm dangling like a broken arm. I got no regard, like I'm famous.
Yo, you know what it is. Episode 7 of the motherfucking Swanglin Show.
Swanglin Show.
I'm your host, Joshua P. Dunn. Today, the P is for Padre. No Tony Gwynn, no Dave Winfield. You know what I'm saying? In the building with me, consistently, is the fickle freckle boy, my motherfucking co-host, John Ellie, Noah's dad, the Blue Devil, the Angelo's fucking pizza advocate, that Frederick's fucking Ville, pure fuckery, Newkleus. What's up, my dude?
Great, always a pleasure to be here. How's it going, everyone?
Oh yeah, it's dangling and swangling. So it's 2019. We're on episode 7 of the Swanglin Show. We love hip hop on the Swanglin Show because that's, you know, we've been fortunate enough to be able to make money through that art form and be embraced by that culture. So we fucking love hip hop. So we're gonna dive right into one of the big stories to top off the year. Tip off the 2019 is the highest selling album artist of 2018 is Detroit MC Eminem.
That's amazing. I wouldn't have actually guessed it. I mean, when I heard it, I wasn't surprised because of how big Kamikaze was and the beef with him and MGK and all of that. So I wasn't necessarily surprised when I heard it, but I wouldn't have guessed it.
Well, that beef was huge at social media, man. Like, they took over the internet, the Eminem versus MGK. I heard both tracks of that diss. Who do you think won that diss?
Oh, Eminem, for sure. I think MGK, I give him a lot of credit because, one, it takes a lot of guts to go out a legend, and I give him an A for effort, but Eminem is Eminem, so.
Well, at some point you got to look at the scenario as a man and be like, all right, this dude's nuts are huge.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Going at one of the dopest MCs to ever touch a microphone, being a dude from Ohio, you got to feel that. And I was pushing for him, and I was hoping that he would come out and roast him, but you didn't. You took the L. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But much fucking love to MGK for having some huge-ass testicles and going at the god.
Oh, for sure. And honestly, I think the fact that the way he went about it is the fact that he still has a career now. Like, I think if he had went about it other ways, he may not have a career. I think he will be able to survive this beef and have a career, where some artists wouldn't have, would have been destroyed.
Well, the two of them, they have a lot of similarities. You know, they're both actors. A lot of people would say that their flow cadence is very similar, which of course, you know, you would have to say that Eminem would be the influence there of the two.
Yeah.
But the similarities are so strong that I hope that in the future people look back on it and they can say it's something that helped mold MGK's career to stardom. I think that would be dope if that happened.
Who knows? Maybe years from now they'll be best of friends. Like, you never know how these things work.
Right. Eminem also had the big banger outside of the Kamikaze project that was the theme song for the Venom movie, which was huge, and I'm sure that contributed to his fantastic year. If you go back and you look at his history as an MC with his affiliation with Interscope Records, Dr. Dre, even his sub-project, you know, and his own label signees, such as Yellow Wolf.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? He's got so much out there as a legacy to where being in the game that long, to be at this stage in his career and to just be able to drop an album with zero promotion, nothing, out of complete left field, and be number one for everybody.
Yeah.
I think that stands a testament to say that, you know, he is one of the greatest recording artists, not just of our generation, but of all time.
That's a fact. That's really can't be disputed if you look at the numbers. I mean, and if you look at artists that are still active, that are selling, he's one of the top selling artists that's still active. And I would say, if you wouldn't even go further, that's still relevant. Because, I mean, for example, the Rolling Stones have sold a crap ton of records, and they're still, like, selling and performing and stuff, but they're not really relevant in a pop sense. But Eminem still is. And he's been around for 20 years now, make in pop relevancy.
And do you think that's because, like, the roots of his career are based upon controversy that provided him with so much media in the early portions of his career? Or do you think as an MC and as a producer that his music is really just that solid?
It's both. I mean, I think it was the whole thing. Like, he not only was the music solid, well, I think because of the controversy, or because his music was solid, the controversy, even without the controversy, the music was going to stand the test of time. And the fact that it could stand the test of time is why the controversy, it wasn't just controversy and then it blew over. That's why Eminem was stood the test of all of that. And, you know, regardless of everything that's happened through the ups and downs of his career, he's still here and still the top selling artist of the last year.
Absolutely. We bow down to the legend of Eminem and his dynasty. Speaking of dynasty, we're going to go ahead and jump over onto the next topic on episode 7 of the Swanglin Show. As avid football lovers, myself, I watched it. Newkleus, I know you watched it. We're talking about the national championship college football playoff game between Clemson Tigers and the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Yeah.
Where Clemson went over 44-16 in dramatic fashion. The question is, at this point, we knew that it was clear-cut between those two teams. We talked about it earlier in a previous episode of the Swanglin Show.
Yeah.
We both called that out right off the rip. We said, okay, it's going to be Alabama versus Clemson. Oklahoma doesn't belong. Notre Dame does not belong. We knew that, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking at this. Is it safe to say at this point that Dabo Swinney and Clemson, Trevor Lawrence, this is like a legit dynasty at this point?
Yeah, it's a dynasty. Even if you can't call it like a national dynasty, it's definitely a dynasty over the ACC and like partial national, because it's basically an Alabama-Clemson dynasty right now. It's basically one of the two. They've been in the championship the last 4 years. And I mean, the only other programs that really are competitive with them is Ohio State and Auburn. Really, like, I mean, that's about it as far as I've seen. And Auburn could beat Alabama, and Ohio State, although it has beat Alabama as well, but Alabama could beat Clemson. And I think Clemson can be touched and beat year in and year out by the best of the best. But you're gonna have to bring your A game.
In that championship game against Alabama, they fired on all cylinders.
Jeez.
Every play, every side of the ball. One of the most dominating and impressive championship victories, definitely within the existence of the college football playoff system.
It is, yeah, for sure.
If not dating back to, within the last
BCS.
20, 30 years of the BCS system as well. That was epic beatdown status. I know it's going to be a culture shock for Nick Saban and the Alabama program directors and their program in general of how do they move forward from this, knowing that they have to come in next year and save face and go straight for that championship.
Well, I do want to point out that Alabama smoked Notre Dame a few years back with the Manti Te'o Notre Dame team, and that was like a pretty bad beatdown. But that was the last beatdown that we've seen, and that was before the playoff era. But other than that, really, it's here and there. It doesn't happen often. You find that. But then back to what was your other question about that? It was about Clemson.
Clemson, are they the dynasty? Are they the real deal?
Yeah, I mean, Dallas.
Can you say 10 years from now, do you think they'll still be at this level of prestige, still at this level of talent that they have right now?
Yes, and here's why. Because it goes beyond, like, the program. It's the campus. It's the atmosphere there that they're building. Dabo Swinney, as long as he's there, I mean, I don't know who will come next, but Dabo Swinney's got a really good thing going there, and they're getting really good recruits. And there was a story, Urban Meyer was coaching in Florida, and Charlie Strong, who was gone on to be a head coach elsewhere, was an assistant for him. And Urban Meyer is yelling at his staff about recruiting. And like, we keep losing recruits to Clemson. Why is this? And Charlie Strong asked Urban Meyer, he said, well, Coach, have you ever been to Clemson's campus before? And he said, no. And he's like, well, that's why. He's like, it's pretty awesome. You know what I mean? He was like, that's why. It's a cool place to be. If you've noticed in their facilities, they have a slide that they can go down from the second floor to the first floor.
That's sweet.
Yeah, he's setting it up for them to have a dynasty. He's setting it up to have a culture that I think they're going to have a good run here. And I think he'll go down as the next Urban Meyer and the next Nick Saban. It's him. Urban Meyer, since Urban Meyer's leaving the game, it's Dabo Swinney and Saban, and that's it. Who else has got a title? I can't even.
It could be a potential returning Bob Stoops to a potential maybe Big 12 program or Big 10 program. There's been a lot of rumors about that. You're talking about this environment that they've built at Clemson with the fun, and it's more than just a academic experience.
Yeah.
For the students that go there. I wonder how they felt after winning their national championship game, blowing out Nick Saban's Alabama team. They do the traditional go to the White House. President Donald Trump sets them up lavish display, quote unquote, of cheeseburgers and fries, which is, in my opinion, distasteful and underwhelming. What's your opinion on that, Kyle?
I would have been underwhelmed as a player. When you go to the White House, you don't expect to have fast food. You expect, not that you would expect anything because you're just happy to be there, but you would expect the White House to cater very well for guests. And to just order something that they could have on campus, that they're eating on campus, is a little distasteful. I think Trump himself thought, oh, they're college kids, they like this stuff, it'll be fine. I think, for his... And he also tried to act like he was doing this great thing by paying for it for himself. Well, why couldn't you have sprung for, I don't know, some fancy steak dinner, something, a little nicer for your guests? It just goes to show that maybe he's a bit out of touch. There's a lot of things I could be critical of.
It always reminds me of that scene in the very well-known, famous Tom Hanks portrayed role, Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
Where after winning the national championship, they go there. I wonder how many Dr. Peppers did Trevor Lawrence drink at the White House. If you're hearing this, Trevor Lawrence, email us at ask@doyoufwithjosh.com and let us know how many Dr. Peppers you drank with President Donald Trump.
I bet that he drank at least a whole glass before his meal came, like some people do. Like, he has to get a refill before.
I must have drank 16 Dr. Peppers.
But speaking of Trump and stuff, I did want to talk about some recent news that came out in the New York Times. The New York Times is reporting that senior administration officials have told them that Trump wants to pull out of NATO, and he talked about it repeatedly, privately, during 2018. This is concerning if you've been following the Mueller investigation, or also known as the Special Counsel's investigation, and they're looking into the links between Russia and Trump, and Russia interfering in our election. Well, if you were one that's been paying attention and looking at collusion, Trump wanting to pull out of NATO would be a very big sign of like a payback to Putin. It's just, it's clearly obvious that something that is so detrimental to long-term American foreign policy, it'd be hard to say that you would do that unless you were, I mean, it just reeks of collusion and all the other stuff. Not to mention recently it just came out by the Washington Post, I believe, they said that the Mueller investigation has been looking at Trump. Well, the investigation in general, because it was actually before Mueller was appointed, but since James Comey was fired and he was the one heading the investigation, the FBI has looked into this matter of Trump and Russia as if Trump was a Russian asset. And so, which anyone that that's been following the case would say, well, duh. Of course they would have, because that would be normal protocol. It just makes sense that this man is supposedly making deals with Russia, and Lord knows what they know legally, being able to obtain that by the FBI, or what they do know. But
pulling out of NATO is something that is like a very serious thing, because it's such a large treaty. It makes you wonder the temperament level of our commander-in-chief to be able to make that decision so rashly.
Well, it's the exact reason why Russia interfered in our election. In 2014, Russia annexed part of Ukraine, a whole other country, a sovereign state, and took part of their country called Crimea. They took that. NATO as a whole, which is the United States and a lot of Europe and the Western world and and Eastern European allies that were former Russian states. And the whole point of it is to help these states after World War II economically get on their feet without having to have Soviet influence. And so they could do business with us. And then also we would all help each other militarily in case Russia tried to come back.
Protect our own assets and vested interest into our trade.
We would do business with them, and in return, if Russia tried to ever do anything, we would come back to help them. And vice versa. And it has worked in our favor. NATO came to our aid right after 9/11. People want to act like it doesn't work. You look it up. NATO was there for America right after 9/11. But back to what we were talking about with Crimea. So, Crimea, after that, Barack Obama, the Obama administration, which would include Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State at the time, this is for a foreign policy thing, along with NATO, put sanctions on Russia. Which means American businesses, any business from in a NATO country cannot do business with Russia. This has hurt the Russian economy
immensely.
Immensely is the exact word for it. And we could go in even further. We will when this investigation goes further. But it costs trillions and trillions of dollars in the Russian economy. And so when 2016 happened, this is in 2014, when 2016 happens, Hillary Clinton is the Democratic candidate and the likely Democratic candidate along the way. A lot of it was Bernie or her.
Definitely. It was very clear cut from the beginning.
She was the Secretary of State during this administration. During the previous administration. So it stands to reason for Putin. She's not going to budge on the administration she was just a part of with her policy. So Putin knows this before 2016 that he has to have a candidate that could counter that. Whatever happened between him and Trump as far as that is whatever, but it is clearly obvious the Russians wanted Trump to win.
Well,
because
why would they want him to win?
Because he would potentially change policies, do a policy other than keep the sanctions going.
Yes, to definitely
the NATO sanctions
for
going.
them to be able to start to rebuild their embargo and trade.
Yeah, but they still haven't given up Crimea. Yeah, they still haven't given up Crimea, so we shouldn't give up the sanctions. I mean, that's just the way it is. And actually, they've even gone even further and had issues. The Russian Navy and the Ukraine Navy, and have got even worse. But there's trillions of dollars of oil in the Russian Arctic that only can be drilled by companies that are in the NATO realm, like ExxonMobil in America, and they can't do those deals. They can't get a lot of stuff done until it's worked out. Trump, there's just a plethora of connections here. I'm not going to go into all of them now.
Oh man, which is something we're going to continuously talk about on the Swanglin Show, and that's why I think it's such a good look to have you as my co-host to bring these different type of vibes and open up the minds of our listeners who aren't as politically savvy. And as we're transitioning into our next topic, it's something that I want to talk about is the way that our media system in America post 9/11 terror attack.
Yeah.
To where we have pretty much been fear-mongered in a way to believe that Islamic Americans are like the face of a quote-unquote sketchbook version of a terrorist. Yeah. I want to go out on the record on the Swanglin Show and say that I know plenty of Islamic people. None of them are fucking terrorists that I've ever met.
Yeah.
And I feel like our image and our media portrays that as such, and it puts a major wedge in between the growth of the business interests of the people in our country.
Yeah. If you look on the whole of the percentage of Muslims that are militarized, it is lower than 1%. So, but then that's all over the world. But when you speak of America, the terror attacks that we see that are doing the most damage are even ones that even are happening that are being foiled. A good portion of them that I'm seeing lately, more and more all last year, were by white people, angry white males.
I mean, if you look at the history of mankind, when you think of words like pillage and destroy and terror, fear, it's when it comes down to it, it's the pretty light hue shade. European based
Well, all right, so
people that caused most of the major destruction that's happened throughout the history of mankind at this point.
yeah, so even before white people came over to North America and like wiped everything out, they wiped all of each other out in their little pocket, and it was called the Crusades, and they went from one end all the way to the Middle East, all the way to the Holy Land, and yeah, angry bunch we are, and so so we were fighting all there. We couldn't all live together, so we moved to another continent, wiped a million other people, or wiped a whole entire continent, up to 100 million people out, and then done even worse since then, slavery, and further on. And even if you want to go even the worse with white people, to the Holocaust.
Yeah, there's definitely some robust history as far as some scumbag shit coming on the back of European ancestry, just in general. That leads me to ask you this question. You hear people talk about in the media all the time, especially at social media. We see it a lot because we deal with people of all races via hip-hop culture. The concept of white privilege in general.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a white male in my 30s. You're a white male in your 30s. We would be fucking liars to say that white privilege isn't a real thing. It is a thing, but it exists structurally within the system of other white people. It doesn't necessarily exist outside of the race of white people.
Yeah.
As far as like the dramatic effects that happen to it. Now, I feel like me and you, from our socio-economic backgrounds, we haven't really experienced tons of white privilege in our livelihoods because, we come from middle class or lower families.
Yeah, humble surroundings.
But that leads me to this question. We start talking about the history of the gringo fucking destroy mission from the beginning of time. Do you feel guilty? Do you feel guilty for being Caucasian?
No, I don't feel guilty for being Caucasian. I feel sorry that white people have done a bunch of destruction on this world. I don't personally feel guilty for it. I do feel that as a white person, I have a responsibility to let people of other races know that I am not here to destroy you and rape and pillage you. And so I actually had this conversation with my son about slavery and American slavery and stuff a while back. We were watching something on I was watching the movie Lincoln, and he comes in, he asks who was on the TV. It was Abraham Lincoln. So in order to talk about Lincoln, I had to talk about the Civil War. In order to talk about the Civil War, I had to talk about slavery.
Right, and Lincoln abolishing,
setting
the first foot forward to abolish slavery in the United States of America.
Yeah, and we could talk into that in the detail, but basically the summation of it is I told my son that the history of people that looked like him and people and African Americans who look differently from him, and so I told him that he would always have to make sure to let African Americans and other minorities know that he meant them no harm, and that it was a very touchy subject and a very hard concept for a 7-year-old to grasp, but I felt like it was important at the time to continue the conversation. And actually, we didn't finish the entire conversation. We got to pause. We had a guest come over, but I doubt a lot of white families have that genuine conversation that I have with my son, and explaining how one type of citizen, one race of citizen owned another type of race of citizen.
I think it's important too that you laid it out for him, not only in factual standpoint, but you laid out what was the outcome, the long-term outcome of that, and from the angle of being a good person and showing compassion and not judging people. And that's what we're all about on the Swanglin Show, the fucking People's Podcast. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I'm Joshua Dunn. I'm on location right now with my dog Newkleus. We're going over a bunch of different topics today that deal with race relations, and as we're recording this right now, it's January 15th, which today is the birthday of a straight pioneer in the civil rights movement, which is Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes.
So we want to give a shout out to the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., who was so instrumental in pretty much changing the face of the world.
Yeah, very much so. And honestly, he was one of the greatest American citizens we've had. If you want to talk about citizens making an impact on this country, I can't think of a citizen that's had a bigger impact from a private role, not from like a public position, because he was only a minister. He wasn't a politician at all. And so I would...
If there was a Mount Rushmore of peace, Martin Luther King is on that motherfucker.
Oh, yeah.
Because he is such a staple and an icon in the culture of humankind, not just America.
Yeah, he was...
He's like Gandhi level.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Influence.
He had one of the largest countries in the world. He helped cause social change. And his death, because of his death, he gave his life for freedom, or actually for equality, and for people to have the right to a decent education, and what every American expects, they should all expect, in a sense, And he believed in that every American deserved a good life.
Definitely, I think he was an amazing man, and it's something that I feel like if you're from the United States of America especially, this is somebody who you should research, you should read about this person, and you should take things that you learned from his story and apply them to your daily life, because I feel like that's the type of shit that's going to actually help our society as far as dealing with each other as people, nonviolent confrontation.
Yes.
Actually being at the forefront of change and being able to come together as people to make this a better world for our children,
yes,
our children's children, and that's some real ass shit on the Swanglin Show, episode 7. One thing that I am extremely passionate about in my life, right, Nuke, is I have memories that stem back to even when me being as small as like 4 or 5 years old, of watching fucking pro wrestling and just geeking out over this shit. It's been like the coolest shit to me.
Oh, yeah.
Since I was the smallest kid. I used to love this shit, right?
I grew up watching it for sure.
Right now, pro wrestling is at a state of turn to where now it's not such individually controlled as far as the major media. And there's been a big story developing in the news over the last couple weeks, which is the formation of a new professional wrestling company in the United States called All Elite Wrestling. At the helm of this company is Shahid and Tony Khan, the family responsible for ownership of NFL franchise, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Pakistani-born owner, billionaire, has went on the record to pretty much team up with independent wrestling star and son of the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, Cody Rhodes, and indie wrestling darling tag team, the Young Bucks.
Very cool.
To go on a limb and pretty much say that they're sparing no expense to provide a new alternative for pro wrestling fans, which is super fucking dope, and is something that hasn't happened publicly at this level in at least 20 years, right?
Well, this is going to ask you, when was the last time there was a serious threat to the WWE? And another second question would be, why is it now? Like, why is there an opening in the market in a sense?
Well, the last time that there was a severe competitor to the WWE was Ted Turner owned World Championship Wrestling.
I figured as much.
Which stemmed back in history from the Carolinas-based Jim Crockett Promotions that grew and sold out to Turner Organization. It's well documented of the TV rating war between WWF's Raw Monday programming and WCW's Nitro programming.
Yeah.
Which eventually led to Nitro and WCW being the number one company in the world. But they spiraled and downfalled, and eventually that company was sold for pretty much pennies on the dollar to its competitor, WWE, who absorbed all of its lineage and assets and everything. So it's been a number of time. At least WCW went out of business in 2001. So it's 2019 right now. We're talking about 18 years worth of separation since they've had actual competition. Now, to go into the second question that you asked, why is there room for this right now? Well, the reason why there is room for this right now is because being that there's only one mainstream pro wrestling product, it gets stale.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There are other regional and semi-national promotions such as Impact Wrestling based out of Canada.
Yeah.
Lucha Underground, which is a TV-based property on Robert Rodriguez El Rey Network, who is the director of the classic horror film From Dusk Till Dawn. They do some really cool stuff, and then, you know, of course, there's the major corporate giant of Asia, New Japan Pro Wrestling, who is pretty much serves as the number 2 competition to the WWE. But what's crazy is a lot of these people that show up to All Elite Wrestling, they have a press conference that they throw at the Jacksonville Jaguars Stadium.
Nice.
To announce some of their initial signings, and it just so happens to be in Jacksonville the same time as WWE SmackDown at the same building. So, out of nowhere at their press conference, they announced the signings of indie stars such as Penelope Ford, Joey Janela, Pac, formerly known as Neville from WWE fame, and then the big one of all of them, who I think is the greatest professional wrestler of all time, and the bargaining chip that really puts this fucking thing on the verge of saying, wait a second, is Chris Jericho shows up at this thing, announces that he's all the way in, signed 3-year deal exclusive to where he's not going to be appearing for other companies. He's all the way in. So it's like, okay, you get a dude like Chris Jericho to be down on your team. That takes you to the next level, because Chris Jericho is, outside of the wrestling world, just had a #1 album in 2018 with his band Fozzy. A lot of people aren't hip to that. Legit #1 album called Judas that you can download. And he also has one of the largest podcast networks in the world. So this dude is a best-selling author as well, to add to his credits, and just really cementing a legacy. And I feel like his involvement in this company could be what could spark the next boom, period, for pro wrestling, and I would fucking love to see that.
Well, wasn't there something where one of the Saudi billionaire was going to buy WWE or so, made an offer?
No, they had a string of events up to this point. They've had 2 of them held in Saudi Arabia that apparently were very lucrative. And the last one actually was kicked off and hosted and landmarked by the return of the legend, Hulk Hogan.
Yes, I mean, so there is a market for this around the world. So I mean, I could see the All Elite Wrestling taking the show on the road, going to places like Saudi Arabia, going to these other places as well, and making bank. And they really could. I mean, the owner's Khan, he's Pakistani. You don't think he's going to bring him to Pakistan unless he has some kind of issue with this foreign nation, like he never wants to go back or something? Why wouldn't he?
Well, I think the key component to that growth is going to be the way that they approach broadcasting. Now, apparently, being the owner of an NFL franchise, I would imagine that, and they also own a soccer club in England, I would imagine that you have several connections to larger networks. And as that story plays out and develops, we're going to talk more about it on the Swanglin Show, because I love fucking pro wrestling. We appreciate you guys tuning in to the Swanglin Show. It's episode 7. It's Joshua P. Dunn, at Joshua P. Dunn, my boy Newkleus, at MC Newkleus. We're in the building. If you're listening, you know what I'm saying, drop a comment on the motherfucking video. Don't act like a bitch. You know what I'm saying? We're going to go ahead and we're going to transition over into this conversation that I have with this super dope-ass group, Nuke. They're representing Seattle, Washington. They're called Tricknology. So we're going to jump right into that here right now on the Swanglin Show, episode 7.
What's up, Tricknology?
You know what it is. You're on the Swanglin Show, episode 7. It's Joshua Dunn. I'm in the building right now. I got special guests on the line. Seattle, Washington-based hip-hop group Tricknology. What's happening?
What's happening? Peace. What's up?
On the line, we got Deathworm, Exile, and Big Mame representing Tricknology. How you guys doing in 2019? What's going on with you guys?
Man, 2019 is going to be so good to us. It's been so good already. Yeah, we're doing good. We did. Last year was a real productive year for us. We're trying to go harder this year.
That's what's up. You guys are somewhat of a new act. A lot of our listeners might not be familiar with what you guys got going on right now. I know
probably none of them.
that's available that people can check out via your website, right? What's your guys' website?
Website is tricknologyhiphop.com.
You can also follow us
on
on
that
Instagram, Tricknology206 on Instagram.
All right, so all the listeners of the Swanglin Show, you make sure you go through on all your social media feeds, you check out Tricknology, you go check out their website, bang some of this music. While I got you guys on the phone, I want to talk about some different stuff. You guys are coming out of Seattle, Washington area, which has like a very undertone story in hip-hop history. There's a lot of dope shit that's came out of that area. I was wondering if you guys have been influenced or have any specific artists from that area that you guys fuck with heavy.
Yeah, man. You know, for me personally, I came from California, you know, so I brought a different vibe with me up here. But since I got up here, you know, we've been getting mixed with this dude D-Sane, and he's kind of one of those OG dudes, and he's been putting me on to a few cats in the game. But there's this one dude, his name's Birdie, and I've been he passed away a while ago, but you know, like he brings that whole vibe, that whole Seattle vibe, and it's been a learning experience for sure. It's different up here, you know. It's got a whole different vibe up here.
Yeah, there's some good groups. Like we fuck with Raz Simone. Like I was bumping his shit a lot. Me and Danny, when we were working in the kitchen together, we were bumping him all the time. We were bumping that first Blues Scholars a little bit. But you know, like some of those, the mainstream stuff, I'm not really fucking with it. Like, you know, Macklemore and I don't know, whatever's. There's some other cats around here.
Take nothing away from those guys. It's not really my preference either. You know, I like more of an underground type of sound. I used to jam an artist from Seattle back in the day who had a very limited catalog. This dude named Redhead Steve. You guys gotta check him out if you're not hip.
Okay.
To Redhead Steve, he did some horrorcore shit, like late '90s, early 2000s, or some shit that was wilding. I think you guys might appreciate that. There was some stuff that happened in the game a long time ago that kind of regressed a lot of like the punk band and hip hop scene in Seattle area. There was this law that they had put out. That's the teen dance ordinance. Are you guys hip to this shit?
No, I
heard a little bit about it, but I think that got squashed a while ago.
Yeah, it did. They squashed it, I believe, 2005 or something. But
yeah,
there was some type of law that they put in place that prevented venues from having all ages events. That was like very monumental thing that slowed some shit up.
I think it was kind of a short-lived thing because I play in a lot of punk and hardcore bands, and I've been coming to Seattle like relentlessly since the late '90s, and we never had a problem getting a show.
Well, just because there's a law doesn't mean people are going to follow it. I know if I was a player, I'd tell them to suck my dick, and I'd do what I want to do anyway. So I'm sure that very well could have been the case.
Yeah, I think that's what the general consensus
now,
was.
That's cool, though, that you said something about playing in punk bands, because that's one thing I've noticed about your guys' style is that it really is like a hybrid mix, and there is a lot of similarities that exist between punk music and hip-hop, and I think that's really dope that y'all are pulling that together as one thing.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's a big thing for us, I think, you know, because I think all of us, you know, we kind of came up in both of those settings in the hip-hop and the punk world, you know, and I always noticed that division, you know, on both sides. Like, on the hip-hop side, it's like if you didn't like only hip-hop, it's like you weren't a real fan. Or on the punk side, you know, if you didn't like only punk, you know, you weren't really a real fan. So that's what, you know, I think that's a big part of our thing, you know, is just blending those two genres together. And because, like you said, I mean, we're two halves of the same whole, you know.
Yeah, I think a lot of punks back in the day were like closet hip hop heads, you know. They were kind of not really like wanting to say that they were into it kind of heavy or whatever, you know, because I know a lot of you know, in the punk scene, people are like, oh, fuck rap and this and that because of the, you know, the sexism and the misogyny and the reverse racism and stuff like that. So, but, you know, a lot of people, they fuck with it, I think.
I think so too. I personally, coming up, like most of my history in creating music and being in love with music generally stems from hip hop. But I have a younger brother who Deathworm knows my brother. They grew up together. Who is heavy and into some punk shit. So I was exposed to it a long time ago, not by my own accord, but, you know, being a part of my little brother's life, and I fuck with it, and I see the similarities in it, and, you know, I always felt a little sense of pride about the fact that I could go to a hip-hop show and be cool, but I could also go to the punk show and be cool, you know what I'm saying? To where, like, I never had any issues, and I could always maneuver and blend in between different crowds. I always thought it was good for my music. I think that's something that you guys are really going to benefit from in the future.
Yeah, I think it's cool because I think, like, if we got the punk scene to embrace us out here, that says a little something, you know. But, you know, Seattle is, like, very welcoming to a lot of stuff, man. There's a lot of garbage out here, and people they'll give it love, you know.
Well, I think all markets are like that in a sense, to where there is a division from the people that create and the people that consume. I think that's going to exist no matter where you are, but I think it's very important that, and it's something that we talk about on the Swanglin show all the time, is preserving your individuality and making sure that you're going hard for whatever it is that you give a fuck about. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And as long as you guys stay on that path, people are going to respect your art and they're going to fuck with it because of the cultural significance of you being yourself. And I fuck with that about you guys specifically.
Yeah, and I think kind of like our number one rule with this thing is we want to make music that we want to hear ourselves. It's cool that other people dig it, but like when we make a song together, we like that song, and that's all that matters in the end. You know, we love what we're doing, and if people feel it, that's awesome. If not, that's cool too, you know.
Definitely. Now, since you guys are opened up shop and you're running out of the Pacific Northwest, I got to ask you about this classic, straight up classic Northwest hip hop shit. What do you guys think about Sir Mix-a-Lot, Baby Got Back?
Baby Got Back. Man, Sir Mix-a-Lot, he's getting around out here, man. I hear his name a lot out here. I cannot lie, for sure, man. That's
why he's a legend out here, though. You know,
for sure.
Hands down, he was the first dude that broke out to the mass. You know, when hip hop was starting to jump. You know, and it's funny because we go by Dick's Burgers on Broadway like at least 2-3 times a week, you know. And a lot of people that'll be visiting Seattle, I'll be like, yo, that's where the video was filmed right there, Posse on Broadway. And people are like, oh, for real? Yeah, a lot of people don't know about that too, but yeah, man, that Dick's Burgers, man, is like is an icon, you know, kind of for old Seattle hip hop.
Well, I think that the Dick's Burgers might even go deeper than just the hip-hop connection. I think that's something we might want to look into, exposing the history of motherfucking Dick's Burgers.
It's a staple, dude.
Now, you guys got some new music coming, right?
For sure. Yeah, we got a lot of new music right now.
You got a specific, like, an album title or anything, like a project or single specifically that you guys are going to be putting out to us here soon?
We're going to be putting out our second full length, but we don't really have a name for it yet. You know, we got a couple ideas, but nothing concrete yet.
Okay. Well, there's a song that you guys have specifically that I was digging. I was going through your catalog, checking shit out, and the song you guys got called Karma, I thought was really dope. What's the story behind you guys making that song?
Oh, you know, that was actually it was kind of loosely based around an event when I had grown up. It was about this kid who was he was banging in the Bloods, and this kid was 12 years old when he got put on the set, and the dude just got blasted in the middle of the day, you know, by some kid he punked out a couple months prior. So basically the dude had come back, killed him, and then that kid went to prison, and he got punked out in prison. So that's kind of like the story of my verse. It's like each verse kind of has its own little story, you know.
Yeah, and like, you know, my verse is kind of a similar story, but mine was more from like my own perspective. A story with one of my brothers. You know, he's running heavy with the Crips, and there was this dude. He was just fucking with me down the street. You know, I was a skater back in the day, and so this dude was fucking with me. I told my homie about it, and he was with that shit. You know, he didn't like it that dude was fucking with me, so you know, he wanted to go right out on this dude, and we ended up doing it, and like some crazy shit happened. You know, and it was wild. It was an experience. You know, and some people paid the consequences too. You know, so it was an experience. You know, and that's why when Geraldo he hit us with his song idea, it came so naturally when we recorded this song, you know, like the way all of our verses kind of tied together with these events, because we've all kind of had these kind of similar stories with these these karma stories.
Yeah, I think my verse isn't a specific story per se, but I think it's just the idea of it, just karma as a whole. I didn't write it around any specific event or anything, but just to tie everything together. Yeah.
Well, I think as a combination of the three of you together, you guys sound really good. I like what you got going on, and I want to tell you guys that I appreciate you guys taking the time to call in and chop game with me on the Swanglin Show.
Thank you.
Of course, man. Thanks for having us.
No problem. It's always love. And what we like to do is customary. On the Swanglin Show, we end every episode. We give the open floor, red carpet treatment to our very special guests to go ahead and shout out their people and what they got coming. May y'all let it loose.
Well, I think for one, we give a shout out to the Swang, man. Thanks for having us. And like I said, we got a new album. Hopefully, we're going to drop it before our tour in spring. And check us out, TricknologyHipHop.com. And shout out to D-Sane. Shout out to Randy at Undercast Studios.
Shout out Cafe Red.
Jeremiah, our boy over there.
Yeah, man.
I don't know.
You know, shout out Seattle. Shout out Ohio too. You know, it's we're trying to unite this thing. You know, we're trying to bring it all together.
We're trying to come out there, man. We wanna get together. Maybe we could do a show with you out there or something. That'd be kind of
we
dope.
can definitely make something like that happen.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. We're willing, man. We want to do that. That's something we definitely want to make happen.
Well, when you're on your tour and you're out here sliding throughout the country, you guys make sure that you stay up, stay safe. You know what I'm saying? Watch your pocket. Have a wonderful experience on the road. I appreciate you calling into the Swanglin Show. This has been episode 7. It's your boy Joshua Dunn. It's going down, bitch.
Swang. I know you feel me. Swang. Conspiracy. Hey, swang. That's our shit. I'm dangling like a broken arm. I got no regard like I'm famous. I stay stankin' like an open jar. Candy kush for my sweet tooth. Optimo is my shell of preference. We make a waves like